Hello and welcome to another Vista Tips and Tricks video. Today we are looking at the command line feature in Vista V3. I'm currently running the latest beta of R3, but this will work across any of the V3 builds that you have running. So today we're going to be focusing on how to utilize the command line within our show file. So we'll start off with the basics, which will be things like selecting fixtures, selecting different ranges of fixtures, and then creating groups, presets, and cues. And then I'll move on to some of the more advanced stuff, where we'll find out some more of the kind of shortcuts and quick things that you can do with the command line to save you time whilst programming. So there are a couple of ways to interact with the command line in Vista. One way is to dock a virtual keypad. You can see we have a virtual layout of all of the commands that we can use, and you can either use a mouse or a touchscreen to type them in. So for a quick example, I can go 101 through 112 and then double click at to bring them to full. But these commands are also mapped to your standard QWERTY keyboard, and that is the method I'm going to be using today. And because of that, I have also installed a key mapper, so you can see on screen which buttons represent which command. So if I do that string again, I'm going to type in 101 through 112 and hit A twice for at to bring them to full. So this is how I'm going to be explaining things today. So hopefully you'll be able to see kind of which keys respond to which commands as I'm typing them in. So before we get on with programming, a few things to note about the command line and kind of how it behaves. So the first thing is you can use it in conjunction with your on-screen controls and your physical encoder controls at any point. So for instance, if we clear out here, if I select 11 through 20 and bring them to full, I can then jump onto my screen and change the color using my color picker, and then I can jump back to my command line and put them at 50. Vista allows you to basically use any of the controls it has at any point whilst manipulating your fixtures. So don't think you just have to stick just to command line or just to the on-screen controls. You can use them in tandem at any time. Another thing to note is when using command line, it's often a good idea to kind of number your fixtures in a logical fashion, as it's the fixture number that you'll be using to kind of call them up and select ranges of fixtures. So this show file has kind of a good example of that. I've also given myself a couple of different layouts. So depending on kind of how you like to view your information, you also might want to create kind of your standard Vista layout like this, where you have like them represented on screen as they are in the rig, but then something like a fixture grid, where I have them kind of by type, but also in their number range as well. And this is a really good example of what I mean by selecting in ranges of fixtures. So as you can see, each fixture type starts off with a whole one value. So we have 11, 21, 41, 101 and 201, and they go up numerically in that range. This is something that I like to do, and I know many other LDs like to do, but of course make your numbering make sense to you, so don't have to follow this strictly. But what it means is if I want to select, say, all of my psych fixtures, which are these cyan colored ones here, I can just go 41 through 56, and as you can see, I've selected that whole range. Again, if I want to select my spots, 101 through 112 selects that whole range. If I want to select my pipe ends, 11 through 20 selects all of my pipe ends. So having something numbered in this kind of fashion will really help you speed up your programming when using the command line. So the last couple of things before we get programming to point out that might be helpful is, first of all, I like to see the numeric value of what my fixtures are currently sat at on the fixture icon themselves. So to do that, go to Chooser, Layout Options, and then click Show Intensity Value. And this will allow you to see what your fixtures are currently set to in the fixture chooser itself. And the last thing to note is the command line bar itself. As you probably noticed, as I'm typing in syntax, it's keeping track of everything I do, and this can be docked either at the top or at the bottom depending on your preference. So with that being said, let's get started with some programming. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to show you kind of how to call fixtures up and give them values. As you've seen, the first shortcut is to just hit @ twice. Now that can be either the asterisk on your numpad or the A button on your keyboard. So if I go 101 through 112 and hit AA, that will automatically bring whatever fixtures you've selected to full. So you don't have to type @100 enter. You can simply type @ or ***. Another thing to note when giving intensity values is you don't have to type 0. If you want to just go 250, you can hit A5, which means @50, and Vista will put the 0 in there for you. So it's just a quick way to kind of bump between values as you're kind of leveling stuff. So as a couple of other quick examples, I can use asterisk as well for @3 will take me to @30, @7 will take me to @70, @4 will take me to @40. Now of course you can type in a direct value, so I can go @36, enter, and it will take my fixtures to 36. A couple of other extra things you can do with the command line. If you wanted to add, say, 10% to this, all I have to do is go +10, enter, and it's gone to 46. If I want to take 10 off of that, I just go -10, enter. Takes me back to 36. So that's some of the shortcuts you can use when giving your fixtures intensity values. So the next thing we're going to do is create some groups. So I'm going to go to my Components tab so we can see the groups as they're going in. I'm going to use F7 to clear my programmer, and I'm going to start creating groups. Now these groups are also going to be kind of following the same numbering as my fixture ranges. So first group I'm going to create is for my spots, and it's going to be all of my spots in order. So I'm going to go 101 through 112. I'm going to hit S for store, G for group, and now I can type in the number of the group I want this to store to. Now because these fixtures start at 101, I want my groups for these fixtures to start at 101, so I'm going to type in 101. So as you can see, the command line is also keeping track of what we're doing, so we can make sure it's correct. So fixture 101 through 112, store group 101, enter. As soon as I hit enter, I get my create group dialog box, and I can now label it. So this will be all spots. If I now deselect everything, I can now, instead of having to type in 101 through 112 now, I can simply just type G for group 101, enter, and it will select that group. So let's quickly create some more groups. So I want just my on-stage spots next. So that will be 104 through 112, store group. And now this time, because it's going to go numerically upwards automatically, I don't have to put the group number in. Vista will automatically make this 102 for me. So if I hit enter, and I'll call this on stage spots, you'll see that it's automatically given it a group number of 102. Now the last spot group I'm going to do is kind of an upstage, which will be the back 2 rows of spots, and they start at 107 through 112, store group, enter, and I'll call this upstage spots. So now that we have made some groups for our spots, let's move on to our washes, and they are 201 through 206. And if I use my little zoom in tool down here, you can see that they are multi-celled fixtures. So I'm going to be showing you how to quickly select all of the cells within your fixtures over a range of fixtures using your command line, and then making groups out of them. But the first thing we're going to do is make a whole group. And another thing, if you have accidentally deselected your fixtures, like I just have, another really nice shortcut is double tapping F will bring you your last fixture selection back into your command line. So if I now double tap F, you'll see that I get my washes back in the order that I selected them. So at any point, if you accidentally deselect your fixtures, just double tapping F will bring that selection back into your command line. Now we have our last selection back in our command line, I can go store group, and because these fixtures start at 201, we're going to store them to group 201. And we're going to call this all washes and hit enter. Now, the next set of groups I want are for the individual cells. So I want all of the center cells and then all of the cells out from that and out from that and out from that. So I'm going to use my command line to do this. And this is one of the most useful things I have found with the command line is the ability to select ranges of cells over ranges of fixtures. So with these fixtures, I'm going to go 201.1 for the first cell through 206.1. And if I hit enter, you'll see that it selects just the first cell over that whole range. So now I'm going to hit FF to bring that selection back into my command line. I'm going to go store group, enter, and we're going to call this cell 1. Now I can do exactly the same for the rest of my cells. So I'm going to go 201.2 this time through 206.2, store group, enter, and call this cell 2. And then I'm going to go 201 through 0.3 through 206.3, store group, enter, cell 3, and then 201.4 through 206.4, store group, enter, cell 4. So if I zoom back into these, you can now see that if I go group 201 at to bring them to full, I can now say select the third cell by going group 204, and I can take that 250, for instance. So I can quickly select a whole range of cells and then store them to groups to make it even faster to select them later on if I'm doing something a bit more complex with my multi-celled fixtures. So to save a bit of time, I've gone ahead and created some more groups for the rest of the rig in the same numbering style as we have been doing. So my cyc starts at group 40, 41 for the top, and then 51 for the bottom. The pipe ends start from 11, and then group 12 for stage right, and group 13 for stage left. And I've also color-coded everything and arranged them in my quick picker in a grid style. Now to do this, go to the little spanner in the corner, select grid, and then once that has been selected, you can use your green modifier key or your Alt key on your keyboard to simply drag and drop your icons around wherever you want them. You can have spaces, it can be kind of whatever you need. I've also color-coded them so you can easily see which kind of fixtures these groups belong to. So I'm going to do that now for these last 4 groups down here, which are for my specials. So as you can see, the first group belongs to these 3 specials here, and they are blue. So I'm going to right click, go to change border color and make them blue. Then we have some magenta ones down here. So change border color, make them magenta. We have some orange ones at the top, change border color, make them orange. And then we have a white one for our sofa, so change border color to white. So this is something I also like to do just to kind of make everything a little bit more easy to navigate. So now we have some groups built, we're going to use those groups to create some presets for us. I'm also going to be showing you how to relabel stuff using the command line and also renumber items using the command line. So the first thing we're going to look at is some color presets. I'm only going to make a few to keep this kind of quick. We're going to use our cyc fixtures, so I'm going to start with group 40 and then hit at to bring them to full. And then using your encoders or your on-screen controls, we can start mixing some colors. So we're going to start off with red. So I'm going to hit FF to bring that selection back into my command line, and then I'm going to go S for store, and then this time we're going to use P for preset, and then we can number it from here. So I'm going to start this at, say, 21, and then hit enter. Now from here, you've got your kind of standard dialog box or presets, so we can see that we've already filtered down to just color, because that's the only thing in our programmer apart from intensity. By default, Vista will only give you an intensity preset if you actually define that you want an intensity preset. Otherwise, it will just give you everything from position onwards. And we were going to make this global because we want all of our fixtures to be able to use this. And we're going to label this red. Now I'm going to do this process again and show you how quick it is to create some more presets. So I'm just going to go to my components tab, and I'm going to drag and drop this over here so you can see them going in as I make these. So we're going to make an orange one. So now I have mixed my color. I'm just going to go SP for store preset, enter, and then type orange, and then hit enter. Then FF to bring that fixture selection back. We'll make a yellow one, SP, enter, yellow, and then a green, store preset, enter, green, FF to bring that back, store preset, enter, cyan, enter, and then we'll make a blue, store preset, enter, blue, oh, if I spell it properly, blue, enter, FF for my selection again, and then we'll end with a magenta. So store preset, enter, and then magenta. So as you can see, it's actually really quick to quickly mix a load of colors, and then with your command line, just store preset, enter, and it gives you a new preset. So a couple more useful things we can use our command line for is to actually define exactly what attributes we want to store to a preset, and also recall just the attributes we want to recall from a preset. So I'll show you a couple of examples of this. So I'm going to create a new preset that will store everything that we're looking at. So I'm going to hit F7 to clear live. I'm going to go group 102 for my on-stage spots, hit at to bring them to full. And now using my on-screen controls, I'm going to say zoom them out. I'm going to give them a color. I'm going to give them a gobo. I'm going to just sharpen that up a bit. And again, we'll bring these like downstage, just off of the cyc. And I'm going to save that as a whole preset. So I'm going to save all of those attributes. So to do that, FF for my selection, and then store preset, enter. Now, because I haven't defined anything that I want to store exactly, I get everything in my preset. Now, of course, from here, you can filter out what you want to keep and what you want to get rid of, but I'm going to use this as an example of a whole preset. So I'm going to call this downstage red gobo. We're going to make this apply to just these fixtures and then hit OK. So now if I, again, clear live, I can go FF for my last selection, give it some intensity, and if I want to recall the whole preset, I just hit selection, preset, 28, enter, and I get my whole preset. So I get everything that was in there, my gobo, my color, my position, etc. So say I don't want that. Say I just want the position and the zoom out of that. So I might just want a bit of that preset. So I can filter what I want from that preset using my command line. And this is something that's extremely useful because it means that your presets can be used in a more dynamic way. You don't have to just use them for exactly the whole look that you saved. You can just pull a little bit of that look out of your preset. So if I again just clear out, give myself just intensity. If I want to pull, say, just the position and just the zoom, so I want them to just go downstage and zoom out, but I don't want the red and I don't want the gobo. I can go fixture selection. I can then go preset 28, and then I can define just position and just gobo, just position and just zoom, by using the alternate functions of some of our keys. So if I hold down my Alt key, you'll see that I have, underneath my numeric keys especially, some more functions. So if I wanted position and beam, I would now type 8 for position, 5 for beam, enter. And as you can see, that it's only pulled the position and beam information out. It's left out the red and it's left out the gobo because I didn't define in my command line that I needed them. Say I do want to add that gobo, but I don't want the color. I can just go last selection. I can go preset 28, hold down Alt and hit 4 for gobo, hit enter, and it'll bring that gobo in. So you can filter your presets using your command line. So either recalling from your preset like we just did now, or if we create a completely new look, we can filter 2 different presets. So I can create a new look. Let's go cyan. Again, let's bring them kind of down stages. Let's zoom them out. Let's do kind of like another gobo look. Let's just straighten those up. Make it just off a sharp. So say that's another look that I want. But instead of saving this as a whole look, I can save just the bits of it that I want to different presets. So there's a few ways you can work here, depending on, again, your style, the purpose of the preset itself, etc., the type of show. Say I only want to save now the position and beam information, so I don't want color and I don't want gobo. So if I want to save a preset with just those bits of information, I can go FF for my selection. I now can go store, and I can go Alt 8 for position, Alt 5 for beam, P for preset, enter. And as you can see, it has automatically filtered for me just my position and just my beam information. So I can call this so downstage, position and zoom, enter. So it hasn't stored the gobo and it hasn't stored the color for me. So there's a couple of ways of using your command line to filter your presets. You can either filter to a preset or filter from a preset, and this can be very, very useful when programming. So now let's build a queue. We can make some more presets as we go, etc. So in our kind of like imaginary show, I want to build kind of like a preset queue to start everything off. So I'm going to start with my spots as they are, and I'm going to bring in my psych. So I'm going to go group 40, and that's a bit bright, so maybe let's go at 3 for 30. And then I'm going to select them again and go preset 26 for my blue. That's really nice. In fact, maybe I want the top row to be in a cyan that matches my spots. So I'm actually going to go group 41 because that's my top row. Preset 25 for cyan to change them. And once I'm happy with my look, I can now store this. So to store a look, again, it's the same kind of system as storing a group or storing a preset. We hit S for store, and now we can do a number of things from this. So if I hit store on its own, you see that Vista has automatically decided to give me Cue List 1 because this is my first Cue List. And if I hit enter now, I'll get my store part dialog box. But I can also be kind of direct with my definition of where I want things to go. So I can go store, W for Cue List, say this needs to be Cue List 10, store Cue List 10, and I can go Q for Q 0.5. So you can store kind of like directly to a Cue List to a queue if you want, or Vista will store to the next available queue in your dedicated Cue List. Which we'll come on to next. So we'll keep this as it is. We'll go store Cue List 10, Q 0.5, enter. And as you can see, we've been given Cue List 10, we've been given Q 0.5. So now we just have to label both of these things. So I can label this from here. So I'm going to call this main Cue List. And we'll call this Cue preset. And we'll give this a time of 3 seconds. And we'll hit OK. And if I just drag and drop my components back over to here, we can see that our cue has been recorded and is now showing in our playback window. So I'm going to hit space to actually play this cue. I'm going to hit F7 to clear live. So now the data that we're looking at is coming from our cue. So using live, we can now build on top of it. So the next thing I want to do is create a blackout before we bring up our kind of first scene. So to do that, I'm going to hold down Shift. I'm going to use the Select Active button, this soft key down here, and then I'm going to hit the Z key. Z key will just take things out, and this will be our second cue. Now, because our main cue list, Cue List 10, is currently the only cue list in our console, Vista has automatically made this our dedicated cue list. Now, the dedicated cue list is a really useful function. Basically, this allows you to keep track of where you're storing things to. So when I select a dedicated cue list, I now no longer have to define which cue list this is going to. In fact, I don't actually even have to define which cue it goes to. If I want this to just be the next available cue, all I have to actually do is hit store. And when I hit the S button, you'll see that Vista goes, you want this to go to Cue List 10, main cue list, Q1. So I don't have to type that information in. So this is another way that Vista saves time when using your command line. So I can just hit store, enter, and it brings up my dialog box. So I can just label my cue now. I'm going to call it BO for blackout. I'm going to make this a 10-second fade. Then when I'm happy with all of my information here, I'm going to hit enter. Then I'm going to hit F7 to clear. Now, if I want to play this cue, I can hit space to play into it. As you see, we get a nice 10-second blackout. But there's also some new kind of navigation controls that we can use. So on your keyboard, if you hold down your control key, and you can use your left or right arrow keys to now jump and skip forward and skip back. So that's a really useful thing that we can do. So if we don't want to have to wait for our blackout, we just want to go straight to it so we can carry on programming, all we have to do now is hold control and hit the arrow key that we want, so either next or last, and it will skip to it. So another top tip, kind of in generic programming terms, always block your blackouts. So this ensures that if you go back and edit anything before a blackout, it won't track through into it. There's nothing worse than kind of hitting go for a blackout and there still being lights on because they have tracked through. So I can block this cue from my command line by hitting the B key. And as you can see, all of your things like moving black, block functions also target the dedicated cue list. So I don't have to define which cue list this needs to go to, and I don't even have to define which cue. I'm sat in this queue, so Vista has automatically told me that this is going to block the Q1 in main cue list. So I'm just going to hit enter. So let's bring up our first bit of the scene. So we're going to use our command line to bring up 26 on its own at 50. We're going to start with our bar. We're going to put that in kind of an orange, I think. So we're going to go preset 22. Then we're going to bring up 28, maybe to full. And we'll put that in preset 26. And then we'll go 27 at 30 maybe. And then let's put that in maybe a magenta. we have this kind of like dingy bar look going on over here. And I might want to have maybe my floor cyc behind that as well. So I'm going to select 51 plus 52 at 30, just to kind of give that a bit of a backdrop, maybe at 40. There we go. So this is going to be my Q2. So as soon as I hit store, you can see that it automatically wants me to store this as Q2 because that's the next available queue in the dedicated queue list that's selected. So for this example, I'm actually just going to hit enter twice. Then I'm going to skip to that queue. So I'm going to hold Control and then my right arrow key and then F7. So all I've done is I've gone into that queue and I've cleared live. And from here, I can now label that queue by just hitting L to label. So we'll call this bar. And I can also give it a time from here by hitting T for time. So let's give this a time of 5. So if I now use Control and my left arrow key to skip back and then spacebar to play. So now if we hit space, we get our 5-second fade. But we also get this kind of horrible color shift as they are going from their home color value, which is open white, to their programmed value. But we can use our command line to mark this cube as well. So all I have to do is hit I for mark in black and enter. We get our marking dialog box. You can check your settings here. I'm happy with this, so I'm going to hit OK. Then I'm going to use Control and then arrow back just to skip back. And then I'm going to hit space again to check that that mark worked. And as we can see, our colors have marked. So just in these 3 queues, we can see that we can block a queue, we can mark a queue, we can time a queue, and we can label a queue all from the command line without actually having to kind of leave this screen. So that's another bonus of using the command line, is you can directly target something no matter kind of what you're looking at on the screen. So you don't actually have to go navigating around the console to do those actions. So now we're going to carry on at programming our little show here, and we're going to carry on with unit 29. I'm going to bring that to full. I'm going to make that maybe at 50. And say I want this to adopt the color of a unit that's already on. So I can see that 27 has kind of this nice magenta thing going on, and I want to copy just the color. I want to keep the intensity at 50, and I want just the color. So with our command line, we can actually copy attributes from other fixtures, and we can also filter what we want to copy. So I don't want the intensity out of unit 27, I just want that magenta color. So to do this, I can go 29, hold on my Alt key and hit 9 for color, just like we did with our presets. Then I can hit at F for fixture, and then I can choose the fixture I want. So I'm going to hit 27 and then hit enter. And as you can see, I've copied the color from fixture 27, but I've kept the intensity that I wanted because I only defined color. If I wanted to copy everything that fixture was doing, I would simply go 29 at fixture 27. And as you can see, that would also take the intensity to 50 for me as well. I'm going to quickly Control Z to go back to what I want. So now we're going to give the sofa some front light using fixture 108, bring it to full. Going to get rid of the gobo. I think I'm going to keep the color though, and then just swing it kind of onto these guys on the sofa over here. Might zoom this in just a little bit, something like that. Drop it to like 80%, and then save that as a preset for that fixture. So I'm going to go last selection, and then I'm going to go store preset, hold on Alt, hit 8, hit 5 for position and beam, hit enter, and then we're going to call this sofa front. I'm going to hit OK on there. Then we're going to go and bring 53 through 56 to 40 as well. And we're going to store this as our next queue. So I'm going to hit store, I'm just going to hit enter. Then I'm going to skip forwards using Control and an arrow key. Then we're going to hit F7 to clear live. So we're just looking at the information coming from our queue now. And from here, we're going to give it a time of 3 seconds. and we are going to label it by hitting L, and we'll call it sofa up. And we also want to mark the colors and positions of those movers in that queue. So I'm going to hit I for mark, hit enter, and we are going to mark everything except intensity, I think. And then we're going to hit OK. And then we're going to go back and check that worked. So I'm going to just hold Control, skip back, and then hit space to play. And as we can see, we have our 3-second fade up with our sofa, with our movers marking and our profiles color changing correctly. So now I'm going to show you some extra bits that we can do. So say in the preset, if we go back, so let's skip back to our preset. Now in the preset, say for some reason we need the sofa to actually be highlighted in the same way it's going to be in, or the same backlight as it is in Q3. So what I can do is I can go 29. I can actually go at Q for Q 3, and what it will do is it will copy the value that it's at in Q3. And also the timing as well. If you don't specify any attributes, it will also copy the timing that happens in Q3. I can go Control Z to get rid of it again, or I can maybe bring up the bar as it was in Q3. So if I go 26 through 28, and I specify I just want intensity and color at Q3, so I want it to copy it from Q3, hit enter. We can then bring in what those fixtures are doing from Q3. And this is bringing it into live, so you can bring in any information from any queue anywhere in the desk into your live programmer using this syntax. So literally fixtures at whatever queue or whatever queue list that you want, and it will bring it into live, and then you can store it somewhere else. Hit F7, clear live, it goes away again. Another nice thing that we can do is say that in this preset I actually want 101 through 103 to be doing what the rest of them are doing. So I can go 101 through 103, and I can copy that exact look by going at fixture 104, enter. And as you can see, it immediately copies that look for me. I can then update this preset with that, and any I can update this queue and any presets by now just hitting U for update, and it knows that it wants to update the queue that I'm currently sat in. So I'm going to hit enter, and I want to update queue lists and presets this queue, so I'm just hit enter again for OK. And now you see that live is cleared, and I actually have that very downstage row updated into this queue for me. So let's have a look at storing to another queue list. So queue list 10 is our main queue list. In fact, let's renumber that as well, so I can kind of show you some of the queue list functions. So to bring up a queue list rather than a queue, you type in W for queue list, and I can go queue list 10, hit R for renumber, and then hit enter. And then I want to renumber queue list 10 to queue list 1 because it's my main queue list. Hit OK. And as you can see down here that we have renumbered our main queue list. And again, that's the same process for kind of any item, groups, presets, etc. And now let's store something to another queue list. And then I'll kind of show you how you can select and swap between multiple lists in your show. So if we go group 41, bring them to full, and then make them red using preset 21. I now want to store that to another queue list. So if I hit store enter, because the main queue list that I have selected right now is the default queue list, Vista will automatically want to store it to the default queue list. but I can specify kind of any queue list. So if I want to store this to queue list 50, I can just go store, which is S, and then W for queue list, and then 50. Then hit enter, and then in my store part dialog box, you'll see that it gives me a new queue list, which is queue list 50, which I can then label. So I can call this queue list for my psych, and then I'll call this red psych, and then hit enter. Now if I clear using F7, we can see that that information is now out of my programmer and has been stored to queue list 50, but isn't playing. So what I can do is to select queue list 50, I can just type W50, enter. And now you'll see that it has selected it down here. It has become my default queue list, so every time I hit S for store now, it will automatically want to store to queue list 50. So if I wanted to carry on now with queue list 50 and add a load of other queues to it, I wouldn't have to keep specifying queue list 50, queue this, enter. I just have to hit S and enter, and it will immediately go to queue list 50. So that's kind of like the dedicated queue list function just allows you to quickly store to exactly the list that you want. And also allows you to select it, see things appear in your playback window, and also any selected queue list now works with your playback controls. So if I hit space, I will now get my playback controls for this, and I can now skip forwards and backwards using this list. Or if I want to jump back into my main list, I literally have to go queue list 1, enter, and I can quickly skip back through my main list. So it's a really useful navigational tool to be able to quickly kind of jump to different lists, play them, pause them, skip forward, skip back as you're programming. This is really useful for things like timecode, or if you're creating a busking setup where you have lots and lots of lists that you need to navigate, using the dedicated queue list method by simply just typing the number of the list in and then having control of that list is really useful. So that's one really useful thing you can do with the command line. Another one is you can open any list in kind of edit mode. So if I wanted to edit a queue in Q1, I would in list 1, I would literally go queue list 1, Q2, enter, and it'll open that list in edit mode and put me in the queue view for it. If I want to jump to that queue, I can now, in my edit mode, hit jump, Q2, enter, and it will jump to that queue for me. So as you can see, the command line has many advantages. The main one being just kind of direct access to all the information that you have stored and the ability to either recall it or copy it to other fixtures in other lists. So the last thing I'll show you, if I close this, is actually copying the red psych look from my queue list 50 to my queue list 1. So if I now go W1 for queue list 1 and enter, I can now say I want the red psych to actually come up in this queue here. What I can do is I can go 41 through 46, or select the group. I can then go Alt 7 for intensity, Alt 9 for color, and then I can go at queue list 50 and then Q for Q 1, enter. And as you can see, it actually pulls all that information not only from within its own queue list, but from another queue list into live. And then if I want to store this to this queue list, I can hit U for update, enter, enter. And now if I skip back a queue, you can see that that has indeed stored into my main queue list, and that's something I've copied from another queue list. So again, it's a command line is a really nice way of basically directly bringing up information or copying information to or from other parts of the console without actually having to kind of open that list and go there and click on any of those items. You can just kind of grab it, copy it, store it, update it, all from your command line without actually having to kind of navigate through your desk. So I hope this video has been useful. There's a lot more you can do with your command line. A lot of it is kind of like situation based. So I encourage everybody to kind of have a mess about with it and play with it. Obviously, you don't have to use your command line for everything now. As I said earlier in the video, I like to use it in tandem with everything else that's going on the screen and on my console itself. But hopefully this has kind of given you a few ideas to maybe speed up your programming a little bit with it, especially when it comes to storing to multiple lists from live and being able to control multiple lists from live and selecting your dedicated queue list, copying between fixtures, copying between lists. It's really useful for that kind of thing. So as always, any questions about this video, or if anything I didn't explain very well and you need me to go over again, let me know in the comments below, or on the Facebook group or in the forum. Any ideas for videos for the future, again, let me know and I'll see if I can get them to you. Thanks for watching.